Welcome to the Business Growth Podcast. Today I'm here with Randall, the financial firefighter at American Business Coach. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be had here. I like your show. This will be fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know sounds like we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So tell me a little bit more. What do you guys do exactly at American Business Coach?
Put out fires, financial fires. I've done this for 19 years as an outsourced CFO, and I've discovered after all those years that people hire me to fix things. And fix things, unfortunately, people don't realize what their own financial shape is until they have a fire. I have wonderful examples. I did one years ago. It was a big federal credit union. And I called in, the payroll lady had gone on maternity leave, and they called me in just to balance the books. And my first surprise was there was no books to balance, and they thought I was nuts. And we went through lots of paperwork and lots of files, and there was no paper anywhere. And what they did have was a couple $100,000 of the bounced checks. And that's when they knew they had a problem. And that tells you that, whoever their controller wasn't overseeing things thoroughly. As long as there's no kickback, everyone assumes things are happening. So they called me in. 30 days later, we found all these problems, and they had an outside payroll provider who was not doing their job, and we got all these refunds, and we put them back in the black. But it took a month. But those are the kind of things we get called in to do.
Okay, gotcha. And what made you decide to specialize more in this financial firefighter? Because I don't really think I've seen anyone else that's really niche down into this specific type of area.
I think simply because the demand is there. When you're an outsourced CFO, when I started this 19 years ago, people didn't even know what that was, let alone spell it. And the world is my oyster kind of thing. I go out and just fix all kinds of businesses. A lot of contractors. I did timber mills, drillers, frackers, producers, manufacturers, car dealerships, you name it. You just go out and you fix. And then usually I just move on after 30 days. But then there are more and more outsourced CFOs who could do the same thing or better. I freely admit that. What they don't seem to do is still see the big picture for the trees there and say, something doesn't line up. Why are we getting late fees? Why are we not paying our bills on time? I had a car dealership, or I should say like an ATV kind of dealership, doing about $10 million a year. And they're constantly getting dunning notices from their vendors. Why haven't we been paid? And then you walk in, you find out that they've been running out of a checkbook for years. There was no such thing as bookkeeping. And we got them back up and running again. Those are the kind of things. So the firefighter idea is it gets a little better mental vision of what we do. You say CFO, what's that mean? You do books. Well, kind of, sort of, maybe. But what I really do is go in and, if you're losing your line of credit, which happened a lot in the last contraction, and many people get referred in by bankers, lawyers, attorneys, whoever, and they'd say, my client's going to go out of business because they're going to lose their line of credit, because most, especially contractors, cannot live without a line of credit. And so my thing was not to go in and do a turnaround for 60 days or 120 days, whatever. My thing was to go in and say, okay, let's restructure your books however we can, however's needed. And then let's look at giving the bank comfort that you're going to stay in business. And then I would go negotiate with the bankers, which were some fun days too. So that's how I got into this.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say is the main thing, problem that your clients have, and then they reach out to you for help? Is it, like you were saying, keeping access to the line of credit, or what's the main thing, the pain point that causes them to be like, hey, we need someone to come and help us with this?
It unfortunately, for most of them, it is when you finally get a letter or an email from your bank saying you got 30, 60, 90 days before we terminate your line of credit. Because until that pain point hits, everyone assumes that their bookkeeper, controller, or CFO has things in order. And it's not I'm not dunning any of those people. Because a lot of times it's resistance, the psychology of an owner who's always go, 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 who doesn't want to stop and look at the finances and understand what they mean. Yeah. And I think it's another part of my life. Usually I walk in and I start educating. Okay, this is what this means. This is what your accounts receivable how many days sales outstanding? Well, nobody knows that phrase. Okay, how many days does it take to get paid on average? Uh, Owners know that phrase, but they're usually, it's not a top 10 in their mind.
Mm.
And so then, I sit with their accounts receivable people or their controller, whoever it is, and we'll figure it out. And for instance, I had one that was a big contractor. Day sales outstanding was 57 days. Well, you're paying for
Mm-hmm.
that. You got to finance that somehow, right? So your line of credit with the bank is paying for you not collecting your receivables in a timely manner. Well, what's that cost? Well, in the years of no interest to speak of, who cared? We'll just carry it. And then, as we all know, the last few years, interest shot up. And now all of a sudden, we're still at 3.5%, 4%, whatever it may be, with a good line of credit. Well, that starts adding up. Well, where's that money come out of? The money comes out of your back pocket, so to speak. You got to pay it. So I would take these firms and teach them how to be proactive on collecting their accounts receivable.
Yeah.
And it was always, it's kind of revelatory to some people that you can do that. You can actually push that date up, but it takes being proactive.
Yeah. Okay. And what would you say, so when you first start working at a new client, what's the key things that you look for to be able to give them the quickest wins initially?
Well, first off, I want accounts. Well, I want everything. I want a P&L, I want a balance sheet, accounts receivable. I want an aging set schedule for both AR and AP. I want to know where you are. That's the very first thing. And then we're going to do triage. Where are you bleeding? Where's the money going? And that's never fun, but if you want to stay in business, somebody's got to do it. I've been the bad guy who's been brought in to fire people because the owners didn't want to be the ones seen firing their long-term people. But when their income was way up here and goes way down to here, they may love their people, but if you don't have the money to pay the bills, I'm sorry, but something's got to change.
Yeah.
So triage, Leonard, that's the biggest thing. You go in and stop the bleeding immediately, and
Yeah.
and sometimes that means you call your vendors, you call your banker, you call your creditors, you call your insurance
Mm-hmm.
company. Even, can I
Yeah.
restructure this, that, and the other? Can I delay this? Can we change this? Can I reduce the expense? Yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go through a whole like a 10 or 11 step process after that over the next 30 days to get them in shape.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And then what's like next for you as a business for the American Business Coach? What are some of the goals that you're working towards for like the rest of the year?
Well, that's a good question. My goals for the rest of the year is actually do more of what you're doing, which is more podcasts. I'd like to introduce the world to people like you, and then go after some of my special friends, which I've got insurance agents, bonding agents, bankers, brokers, lawyers, all those kind of people, with an eye towards how do you put the fire out. But then, busy writing a book right now, 60-70% done writing the first book, basically saying, okay, don't hire me. Learn how to put out your own fire. Don't hire me. You don't want to hire me. I'm too much money. You shouldn't have to hire me. We should be able to teach you how to put out your own fires. And I think that's going to be a big hit, frankly, uh, because I don't see anything else in the market out there telling me well, my goal is to make it 40 pages, but packed with lessons and hands-on practical stuff that you can just do yourself. That's where I'm going. Then we like to get into doing more seminars and webinars. And eventually the big goal is to do public speaking and teach business owners around the country. And if I have a goal, it's not happened yet, but if I have a goal, I'd like to be able to do that regionally, go to
Yeah.
different cities, do a day or two seminar with all kinds of business owners of
Yeah.
how to make sure they're actually making money. And then I'd love to finish it off in Vegas. Like I say, it's not there yet, but that's in the works.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Yeah, I remember you telling me last time we spoke about wanting to talk more on stages and things. And then so earlier you said one of the things is to get on more podcasts. So what's like the end goal from getting on more podcasts, as an example? What are you looking to achieve from something like that?
Well, obviously, the acknowledgement that there's somebody out there like me that can actually help people. And I really am serious. I would like to get it to restructure what I do from being the hands-on guy fixing every single thing to being the guy you only have to talk to if it really is a dire emergency. Because if we can get you and your business owner, your staff, up to snuff. And it's not anybody's one problem. It's kind of joint things. What I always see when I walk into a firm, big or tiny, doesn't matter. The owner still got to be on board with it and understand the impact of what they're doing with their finances. If you got a minute, I'll give you a cute little story to explain that. Several years ago, during another crunch, I got referred into a contractor who was very large. Spend all day traveling to get to his place, and I walk in the door, and he says, "You wasted your time coming here." I said, "How did I waste my time?" He says, "I just sold a X $1 billion job, big job." Duly impressed. And then I said, "What are your margins?" 3%. I got 3%. I said, "Congratulations. What's your G&A?" And this old man he was not young. He was an older fellow. He'd owned it for years. And I just assumed that he understood the term G&A, general and administrative expenses. What's that? I said, "Well, it keeps the lights on, pays the insurance bill, the minimum stuff you need in order to keep your business going." He didn't know. So he hollers down the hall. And a few minutes later, Mary hollers back and says, 10%. G&A is 10%. And I looked at him and I said, "Congratulations. You're only giving your customer back 7 cents for every dollar that you take in." He didn't like that. He told me, "There's the door, and don't let it hit you on the backside when you leave." That's why I'm always. I guess I shouldn't be so naive anymore, but I think business is about business. But unfortunately, business becomes about a lot of other things, especially when you get successful. Business becomes family. It becomes the airplane. It becomes the equipment. It becomes something other than keeping your nose in the books, because that's not fun. It's not comfortable. And so that's my education.
Right. Okay. And then so your goal is to go on more podcasts to educate people more so they know more how to take care of the business as opposed to needing someone like you essentially.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think a lot of these businesses, they already have a complete accounting staff. My forte really runs like 10 million to 100, 150 million. That's really in that stretch.
Yeah.
And especially when you get over 10, 20, 30 million, you've got an accounting staff. 30, 40, 50, you got an accounting staff, you got a CFO. Then you ask, why do they still fall off the bridge? And there's a certain amount where I think it's because the owner doesn't want to deal with the yucky stuff. It's more fun to go buy another big truck. It's more fun
Yeah.
but unfortunately, the yucky stuff is what keeps you in business. You got to deal with it. And so I think, I feel part psychologist, I already said, where I come in and meet with the owner, meet with the staff, and you hear differences of opinion too. The staff will tell you one thing, the owner tells you something else. So then it's a matter of melding them in between and saying, okay, here's where our danger point is. Yeah, you don't have any cash because of this. Or what I see an awful lot is we have cash, so we spend it. It's in the check register, right? Well, just because you got cash doesn't mean it's really spendable,
Mhm.
right? So I coined a phrase many years ago called abundance of cash flow covers a multitude of sins.
Mhm.
Well, it's true with giant companies. It's true with you and me individually. You start having more income than you did last year, and you think you're going to buy an extra this, that, and the other thing. You're going to subscribe to this, that, and the other thing. And next thing you know, suddenly gets out of control.
Yeah.
We're all human, and businesses are run by humans, and the same thing happens there, just on a much grander scale.
Right. So it's like once you have the extra money, you're gonna find a way to spend it, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to spend it? It's a lot of fun to spend it. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then some curious, just going back to the say like the podcast when you're saying, why do you then want businesses to more be able to be self-reliant as opposed to coming to someone like you? It kind of sounds like you're removing a little bit of work for yourself. So what's like the thought process? Like what's the end goal from doing all of that?
You ask good questions. Um, Many years ago, I got nailed with enough work. I worked 6 days a week, driving or flying between 5 cities, 6 days a week. and did some wonderful stuff with some amazing people. And I had a ball and I made lots of money. And
Mm.
after 18 months, one of my
Yeah.
guys went bankrupt. One of the guys went, he died. One of the guys died. And suddenly my days filled went from 6 days to about two. Obviously, my income dropped greatly. And I went back to sleeping nights. I couldn't keep up with it. So what I'm saying is all this other stuff. This is why I'm starting to really put the head into saying, okay, let's write the books. Let's turn them into like uh, hands-on manuals, if you will, not just something to read and throw on the shelf, but something I can actually make practical for my own business. And then basically become more of an educational firm if that's possible. Because
Right.
I can't do 10 fires a week. It just doesn't work. I can't put out that many. I'm only me. And I think a lot of these things can be avoided if owners would just, you know, look at some practical things.
Mm.
So that's the goal. That's why I want to do all this other stuff, because I can reach a whole lot more people and help a whole lot more people through all these other venues than simply showing up at their job site and fixing their
Right.
books.
Right. So becoming more like a consultant as a, I guess, like as opposed to like the hands-on in the business
Yeah,
type of thing,
right. I
like
think
a
it's
more like a advisory type thing, it sounds like, as opposed to you doing the work essentially.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And what made you decide to make that pivot from what you've always done with the more hands-on type of thing to the more advisory type of thing?
Well, I live nowhere. So if I'm going to go help somebody, I generally got to go somewhere. Next thing you know,
Right.
I'm gone all day or on a plane or wherever it may be.
Yeah.
This method is much more effective. You can help a whole lot more people in one day, and they can help themselves, frankly.
Yeah.
Because no one likes to pay for people like me. Let's just be honest. You pay for people like me when the world falls apart and you haven't figured out how to do it. That's
Yeah.
okay. I'll come. That's fine. I'll come fix it. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I think a lot of this could be headed off in the past with some simple, maybe not simple, but at least with some education and some forethought by owners.
Right. Okay. And is that part of the reason that's like motivating you to write the book as well now to become that more educational firm?
Yes, yes. Because you can lay at bed at 3 in the morning. We all get up at 3 in the morning when the stress hits, right? And 3 in the morning when the stress
Yeah.
hits, what are you going to do? How do I pay the bills? Do I lay off
Yeah.
Mary and John, or do I, what am I doing? And I just went through this past week with somebody else. I got another one. The same thing came and said, we're in deep doo doo. One only has a matter of days worth of cash flow on
Yeah.
hand. And so on that world, I have a lot of friends who are lenders, investors, and whatnot. So hopefully one of these people will step up to the plate and help him, because he's got a great business plan. It's just he's stuck with no cash at the moment.
Yeah.
And I have that several places. But having said that, the last gentleman I worked with a few days ago, he said, I wish I would have met you 3 years ago. I wouldn't be in this mess. So he's smart enough to know he doesn't really need me. He just needs some training. Somebody you got to understand, in the world of, especially contractors, these guys they build buildings. Let's go better. Guy pours cement for his driveway. And his
Hmm.
neighbor comes over and says, wow, that's a really nice job. Can you do my driveway? And next thing you know, he does his driveway. Next thing you know, he does 10 driveways. Next thing you know, he's doing building pads. Next thing you know, he's really in business and he's got employees and he's running to and fro. It doesn't make him an accountant,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't. I mean, no one has infused my brain or somebody else like mine into his head to say, okay, here's what I'm looking for. He's just running it out of a checkbook and trying to keep going.
Hmm.
That's why, I keep going back to this. That's why I think a book, I think the podcast,
Yeah.
educating people is really the way to go to help people, so that
Hmm.
you don't have people say, I wish I would have met you 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And so how has the podcast been going so far? Have you gotten any episodes? Like I see you have the full podcast mic set up already, which is cool, and you got the pretty cool background. How has the podcast been going so far? Or this is like a
Oh, this is just
to start?
this is a startup, Leonard. This is still a startup. Yeah, I've been interviewed by several people in the last month or so, but I've done a couple of my own and frankly don't like them. I want to change how I've done them. And so I'm still learning. I got to figure out how to edit better and how to rolling
Yeah.
things I'd like to do for B-roll, that kind of thing. That's not my forte, but I guess it's going to become mine.
But yeah. Yeah, it's a whole like different ball game, I find. Like I'm closing in on my 100th episode now, and it's really funny just looking at my first ever episode and then seeing how it went from there to here. And then it was like basically my thing was just every episode try to get like a little bit better on the next episode. And then like one time like and then I changed the software that I'm using. I'm using Riverside now, which has been in terms of quality so much better than when I was doing Zoom. I tried to have like a little bit like cool transitions and things. I try to improve my questions and stuff. So it's really interesting. It's just like anything in business, like each time just getting a little bit better. And then when you look back a couple of months from when you started, it's crazy how much you've progressed.
Do you have a sponsor?
No, not at the moment, no.
You want one? Would it help? The
Ye-
reason I ask is I just talked to a firm that they've not signed up yet, but they're big.
Yeah.
They got 50,000 customers one on their world, and we had some preliminary talks this morning about him sponsoring my podcast
Hmm.
series, which would
Yeah.
give obviously more gravitas instantly,
Okay.
and not
Yeah.
to mention he's got 50,000 he can send it to as soon as it's done, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at that and see how if we can capitalize on that whole idea.
Yeah, yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, it is a bit of yeah, I would say like production work and things as well. So if you can have someone else funding that and you have like a one or two people helping you, it makes it so much easier because it does take a bit of work doing like the post production, creating the post, uploading it, all that kind of stuff. So I've got a VA helping me with all of that.
That was clever. I should find
Yeah,
one. It's a good idea.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it helps a lot. I know we're starting to run out of time here. It's just like flown by. So how about let's finish on what's been one of like the most valuable lessons that you've learned in business?
The business is not about business. I've walked into businesses quite a few times and found them hundreds of thousands and literally millions of dollars and expected somebody to pat me on the back and never happened. That's been a shock. That has been a total shock. I got a whole long story, but the crux of it was found a million and a half bucks had been billed 3 years before I ever walked through the building and had never been collected on. Big companies. They're both big companies. And I chased it down and got the $1 million+ and I thought I'd be the hero. I'd be there for the rest of my life. Instead, I was told not to come back. And I was
Mhm.
totally confused. And about a year later, I'm walking through a store for something a couple hundred miles away, not local at all. And one of the employees was in the back of the store. And she
Yeah,
says, "You know why you're not there?" And I said, "No, because you made the staff embarrassed because the staff should have found the money and you did." Isn't that amazing? God, where did that come from? Give me, yeah, but that's not my. I've multiple stories like that.
yeah,
That's what gets me. That's why I say so much about business. It gets lost. The bigger it gets, the more lost it can get.
yeah.
And so I think that's my thing. I've always been just straight to the point. Let's get you
Mhm.
back on track, which creates its own waves, by the way. That's the other thing I learned too.
Yeah,
People don't want 100% truth. They usually want a couple dollars worth of truth. Truth hurts, right?
yeah,
But that's why I trying to be better at giving truth gently instead of bluntly.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. That's a really good point, and it's cool that you ended up finding out eventually why they let you go because that's also one thing like stuff like that, it stays at the back of my mind, and I keep playing
Yes.
things, and it's like, wait, was it because of this? Was it because of that? And sometimes you never end up finding out, and it drives me crazy. So it's cool you ended up finding out in the end, and sounds like learned a bit of a lesson from that as well.
Yeah, not to be so blunt.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's true.
Cool. Well, it's been great having you on the show. I could keep going a lot longer. Where can people go to find out about you, learn a little bit more what you're doing, and I guess like with the upcoming book as well?
Well, the easiest way, you can Google Randall G. Turner on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. I always like new people on LinkedIn. The business website is real simple, americasbusiness.coach. Not .com, but .coach. America's plural,
Yeah.
business.coach. And then we can get in touch and see if we can help you.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Well, I'll include those links in the show notes below. It's been great having you on the show.
You too.
You guys have
Thanks,
been
Leonard.
listening. No worries. You guys have been listening to the Business Growth Podcast. Until next time, keep growing.